Hi, I'm Kevin LJ, and in this video I'd like to share with you about mulch, what it is and how we use it here in our garden at Suansok Homestay, which is located in beautiful northern Thailand. Mulch is anything that you put down on the ground to cover the bare earth that has a purpose. So it's going to give something back to the earth. It's going to help your plants grow, whether they're vegetables or big trees, small trees, shrubs, whatever you're growing. If you're adding mulch to the soil, this is going to be very beneficial for a number of reasons. And I'll go through some of the ways I mulch and how I mulch in this video. There's so much different stuff that you can use for mulch in your garden, both organic and inorganic. I'm mostly interested in organic mulch because this puts something back into your garden that's going to help develop your soil and bring a greater biodiversity to your soil health. When you're thinking about mulch, it's really good to consider what you've got available. In our garden, we've got a reasonable amount of lawn, so I make good use of the lawn clippings. It means it's harder work to mow the lawns and to catch those clippings, but they are so good to use both as mulch and on the compost heap. Hay or straw both make really good mulches if you've got access to them. We get rice straw from our neighbour every year. He's got rice fields that once they're harvested, he sells the rice straw to me, and I'll just pile it up and make good use of it, spread it out through the garden, put it on my vegetable gardens, put it around trees, put it onto areas where I want to just suppress the weeds. Lots of different areas in our garden get a really good helping of rice straw once a year. Because it's so abundantly available to me, I make really good use of rice straw in my garden. Even weeds that you pull from your garden can be chopped and dropped and laid right back down where you've pulled them from, or you can move them to another area if you don't really want them, maybe in your vegetable patch or close to your flower beds. They can really still be used and be very beneficial around the base of trees and shrubs and things like that, where you might not be so worried if they've got seeds and start sprouting again. I find no matter what I do here, the weeds just keep coming back and coming back, so I figure I may as well use them as mulch. You can also use cardboard and paper as mulch. The best supplies are those that are not heavily coated or treated and don't have a lot of sticky tape or plastic tape on them. So we get deliveries of goods in cartons, so we recycle our cartons and lay them down as mulch. There's other things that you can use for mulch that are not organic, like plastic or weed mat or old carpet or rocks, things like this. They will help do a certain amount. They'll suppress the weeds, they'll help with control of the soil temperature, but they won't be as beneficial as organic matter is because they're not going to add anything to your soil. What I like using most for mulch is what I've got available and what will break down pretty easily and not take too long of a time to break down. I'm over here at the next door property today. It's a longan orchard that is not being looked after. The owners live overseas, but they did visit us last week and say that they were going to cut all of the longan trees down and said that if I wanted to make use of any of it for firewood to do so, and I will definitely do this because I need some more firewood for my pizza oven. And I'll also make good use of the leaves. I came down here and had a look, and there's just such a lot of leaves on the ground that have already started to break down. We've had a fair amount of rain recently, and it's just, there's a lot of richness here, so I can't let it go to waste. The trees are going to be cut, they're going to be gone, so it's not like the leaves are going to provide any goodness to anything that's going to grow other than the weeds. So I thought I'll make good use of it in my own garden. I will run the lawnmower over it to break it down even more, because if you use leaves like this directly as a mulch, they can tend to compact down too much, and this can starve the soil of air. You want a bit of air movement through so that the life, the biodiversity in the soil can still breathe. Added to the mix is a good amount of bamboo leaves that I've also raked up. These will help add diversity to the mulch as it breaks down and feeds the soil. I noticed too that there's quite a lot of fungal growth, and that too will help to improve our soil as the mulch sits on top of the soil and begins to break down. This fungal growth will help to increase the biodiversity in our soil. I do know a lot of gardeners like to use wood chips for mulch. I don't have these available, so I don't use them, but they can be great on paths or covering around the base of trees, things like that. Wood chips are going to last longer than lawn clippings or hay or straw or weeds, and they'll look nice in your garden. I like to cover the soil in my garden. I don't like having bare soil. This is not something that occurs naturally, and rather than letting the weeds cover my soil, I'd rather cut them down and use them as mulch, or use grass clippings or straw or any other of the things that I've got available to me. I do this because the mulch helps to protect the soil and increase its fertility. As any organic matter that you use for mulch breaks down, it's only feeding and providing more nourishment and more goodness to your soil. When we bought this land, the soil was really depleted. It had been a longan orchard, and prior to that they'd grown rice here, and both of these crops get a lot of chemical put on them. So there was not a lot of life in the soil anymore. We've worked hard to replenish the soil. We've put a lot of manure, a lot of buffalo and cow manure on. We've used a lot of compost, and we've mulched and mulched and mulched as much as we can. And the more I can mulch, the better off my soil is. This is particularly in the area where we've grown our vegetables. We've added so much to that soil, and now it's come back to life and it's really developed into a nice, rich, organic soil. And I've seen this as we've worked on the soil over the 5 years that we've been here, that the areas that I've added more mulch to have a better soil structure and a greater biodiversity in the soil. When you mulch the ground, you'll find that the microorganisms and the fungi just love it because it helps to give them a very, very comfortable environment to thrive in. Some people have concerns about putting mulch on the garden that might contain seeds, and for me it's not such a problem. The rice straw that we buy from our neighbour has always got some rice seed left in it, and this often sprouts, but I just pull it out or hoe it in and it becomes part of the mulch itself. But generally, mulch is great for suppressing the weeds. Any weed seeds that are in the soil, you put mulch on top of that, they are going to struggle to come through a good layer of mulch. So adding mulch to a garden really does help lessen the amount of time that you have to spend weeding your garden because it's suppressing those weeds. Another great thing that mulch does in your garden is to help to regulate the temperature. Here in a warm climate, it helps to keep the soil a bit cooler. And in cooler climates, it helps to keep a little bit more warmth in the soil, more so than if the soil was exposed. So by helping regulate the temperature, it's creating a really good environment for both the microorganisms and the fungus that will grow in the soil. And along with regulating the temperature, it also helps to retain moisture in the soil. So when it rains or when you water your garden, if you've got it nicely mulched, that water's not going to evaporate so readily. It's going to stay in the soil and just really bring much more benefit to your plants than if it was to evaporate. Mulch helps to prevent soil erosion, and it helps the soil structure, particularly in the top of your soil. If it gets wet and dries out many times, you'll find that it is getting like a hard crust on the top of the soil. Mulch will help to reduce this or to prevent it completely. And probably the main thing I love about mulch is that as it breaks down, it improves your soil quality. It's really giving back into the biodiversity of your soil, the soil structure, and the fungus that grows in the soil. The mycelium that grows in the soil really loves to have that more regulated temperature and the moisture and everything about it, so that it continues to break down the mulch and bring the nutrients that are locked in that mulch down into the soil and there for whatever plants that you've got growing. I usually put my mulch down before I plant. So if I'm putting seedlings in the ground, I'll put some mulch down first, make a bit of a space, and then pop my seedling into the ground. Behind me here, I've got some cucumbers growing, I've got some garlic as well, and I've got it in a bed of a mixture of rice straw and lawn clippings. And in this bed, I've got nothing planted yet, but the mulch is there ready and waiting for my tomato seedlings that are not quite big enough to go in the ground yet. I mulched this probably a couple of weeks ago with some rice straw. I've added some lawn clipping to it, and this is just keeping the soil underneath here really nice and rich and moist and just ready for those plants to go into the ground and give them a really good start to their life in the garden. But before I put my tomato seedlings in here, I'll just rough the mulch up. I'll aerate a little bit so that it can give the soil a little bit more exposure to air, and then add some more mulch on top of it if I think it needs it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned something new from it. If you have, click that like button. And if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, please do so. And if you've got some tips to share about mulching, please drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.